Bienvenidos. That means welcome to our Spanish and Medicine Study Abroad program open house.
Welcome, everybody. If you're an adventurous pre-health, pre-med student that's looking into studying Spanish and shadowing doctors in Latin America, we'd like to open the doors to our house for you today so you can get an idea of what it's like to be a student in Latin America.
All right, so how about we introduce ourselves? My name's Aline. I work in student services. I'm here with my mom. We're a family team.
Hi, everyone. My name's Patty. I'm the program director with the Spanish and Medicine program. We're here today to talk to you a little bit about our personal experience. I'm the daughter of Latino immigrants to Canada, and Aline also had the experience of having her grandparents rely on both Aline and myself to get through that challenge. So hopefully we'll share some of our personal experiences with you today, as well as talk about the ethical dilemmas of the language gap crisis in the US and help you through your decision-making process.
We really need you to have your full attention here because we've got a lot of important information to share with you. So you can turn off any other browsers, any distractions, maybe get a pad of paper and a pen so you can write down the information that we're going to give to you today. And you can also look down below to find a link to the $75 application fee waiver.
All right, first of all, I guess we'd like to thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedules. We know what it's like when you're a student and perhaps have a part-time job and you're juggling a lot of things in your schedule. So thanks for taking some of that time off to look at this possibility of helping you become a solution to the problem.
I'm a student as well, and I really know how hard it is, how difficult it is to make time for these kinds of things while you're also studying. It's difficult even for me because I study and work at the same time. So I really want to thank you for that because I know what a commitment these things can be.
Yeah, and on that bit as well, I think one of the questions that everybody asks themselves is like, why am I not fluent yet? I've taken several classes in high school, or perhaps I'm in college right now and I've already taken a few semesters, yet I'm not the place where I'd like to be. And, I think that's a typical question, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's already hard to be motivated when really you can't practice what you've learned, especially when you're talking about, language and all those kinds of things.
Grammar, yeah.
You really don't have the opportunity to absorb the language. And I think that's a really important part about learning a new
Right.
language.
Absolutely. You're not actually picking it up in like a natural way. As you said, like you're learning the linguistics of it, the grammar, which is really, necessary to begin, but you're not able to sort of put that in a real life context. So how much of that are you actually absorbing? And I know we've talked about it before, and you always say when you're learning a second language or at school, it's more like you're working towards a grade, right?
Yeah,
I know you've said
definitely.
that to me a few times. So.
Definitely. I mean, really, what happens at that point is just that you're memorizing a few bits and pieces and you only use them that one time, and so you just end up forgetting them in the long run. So I mean, it happens to me with like several different subjects. Really, I just memorize the things for the test and then I'm done with it and I don't
And then,
remember
yeah,
it.
you put it in the back of your head and you're not using it, so it's not there all the time. And, if we think about it, it really isn't anybody's fault. It's the way that classes are designed. It's the way that education is designed. Picking up another language is part of a communication skill that's not easily taught just in a classroom. So what we are offering here is an immersion experience where you actually live the language on a day-to-day basis. So it gives you a little bit of a different idea. But really, it isn't your fault that you're not there yet, even though you want to be. So don't beat yourself up. One of the benefits that we're introducing with the Spanish and Medicine Study Abroad program is that you will be immersed in the culture and the language. So whatever it is that you're learning during the day, you will most likely practice that very same day in a real life context. So that makes a huge difference. And one of the things that we need to do to make sure that this happens is to keep our class size small. And so we don't want more than 7 or 8 people in a classroom so that everybody gets an opportunity to speak and to make the most of their class time. And that's why we have very limited spots available for this program. The classes become, I suppose, a little more personalized in terms that the professor will be able to provide an equal amount of time to all of the participants, and everybody gets a chance to practice so that you're more secure when you're out there in the real world practicing what you've learned that day. But we have to remember that this program is not only about classes, it's also about a cultural immersion, which means that you're going to be learning about the nuances that you won't pick up in a classroom about that culture. And these little bits and pieces are going to help you at the end of the day to understand it, to better treat your future patients, because you'll understand where they're coming from, what their traditions are. So part of that is like getting homestays put together. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But there's a lot of work that goes towards setting up this program. And that's why spots are so limited. We have to find the appropriate homestay hosts. We have to set up those small classes, make sure that we have the rooms and everything and all the spots are available. And not only that, but a big part of this program also includes medical shadowing. And I think that's a huge opportunity for everybody that's listening to us out there, especially pre-med, pre-health students who are looking for this, sort of rare opportunity. It doesn't always come about so easily for everybody. So as you can imagine, getting all of that together, placing everybody in appropriate situations is not an easy task, and hence the limited spots that we have available for this program. So it's really important to us that we're getting the right people in to fill these, few spots that we have.
What do you think are the right people for this program?
Yeah, well, I suppose, for us, having people that are a good fit for a program are people who are genuinely interested in helping their future patients with regards to the language. These are pre-health and pre-med students that are thinking about the future, that are thinking about when they actually become the healthcare professionals that are put in a situation where they have to treat patients that are having a difficulty in communication, and they are genuinely interested in making that situation better for them. You have to imagine that these are people that are in a vulnerable state. I think that you're at the most vulnerable when you're sick, especially if you're not in healthcare. You don't know really what's going on. You don't know what to expect. So these are, for me, a good fit for this program is somebody who's genuinely doing this because they're interested in helping their future patients. It has to be somebody also who has a sense of adventure, and they're willing to be away from home and away from the comforts of home. Understand that this isn't like I'm going on a resort vacation and I'm going into a 5-star hotel type situation. The people that are a good fit for this program will understand that you are being immersed in a different culture, and they have to be adventurous in the sense that they're willing to live for a few weeks in a setting that it takes them completely out of their comfort zone, where they will not have the comforts of home, where they will be away from home, where the climate is different, where the customs are different, where the culture and the communication is different. And it's not just about the language, it's also about understanding the customs of the people of the culture that you're being immersed in.
We can listen to Diana and Daniel, for example. We have a video of them talking to us about their experience here, so that way you can see what it's like to be a student that actually got to do the program.
Great, let's listen to their firsthand experience then.
Hola, soy Diana, soy de Dallas, Texas, y estudio medicina en la Universidad de Texas en Dallas. I took 6 years of Spanish in el secundario y en universidad, and for a while I actually worked as a bilingual leasing agent. But then I didn't use Spanish for like 13 years, and so part of why I came here was to get over my nerves of speaking with native speakers, to get to the point where I could speak more rapidly, more comfortably, and it's helping a lot. My very first day we went to Valparaiso. I'm in Viña del Mar. And we walked around and it was amazing, and there's art and there's food and there's like a totally different food culture. A mí me gusta the way here people have onces instead of cenar. They have a much larger almuerzo. So you have a big meal and then you have an afternoon to rest, and then at night you have a light meal, and then you're ready to like go do something, like go dancing.
Mi nombre es Daniel y soy de los Estados Unidos. Yo estudio neurobiología a la Universidad de Carolina del Norte. This is not my first time out of the United States, but it's my longest time that I've been away from home, and I just couldn't imagine being anywhere else. This is a great community. Sela does a great job with the students. The classes are great. They're small enough that you get personal interaction, and they really focus on the most important things about learning the language. And then this week I get to see a dietitian for diabetics, as well as a bariatric surgeon. So I'm pretty excited about that, and I'll be doing that later today. So I've met a lot of new people who have been really good friends, friends of a lifetime, and I've been able to explore the city and the culture and have a completely different experience than what I would be doing if I were to be studying at home.
All right, so that was Daniel and Diana telling us a little bit about their experience as students here in Latin America, and I hope that gave you an idea for what it's like being a student here in the Spanish medicine program in Latin America.
Mm-hmm. On the flip side, there is also those people that might not be a great fit. Could you describe those to me?
Yeah, there's a lot of benefits that come from this program, but we're looking for people who are, again, genuinely interested in bridging that language gap in the future. So, although there are several advantages, we're looking for people that are not only looking to get ahead, for example, in their med school application. So they're not just taking this program because it's going to look nice on their application, or, they're trying to get ahead in terms of being able to say, oh, I shadowed doctors in Latin America, so it's going to look fantastic on my med school app, and I'll be able to have an edge when I'm getting in. You're definitely not a good fit if you have a hard time leaving the comforts of home behind. That, I think, is top of the list. If you're thinking that you're going to have exactly the same experience that you would at home, that everything should be and is and will be exactly as it is today, this is definitely not the right program for you.
At the end of the day, if you're not comfortable with those things, you're going to be more focused on that rather than learning. Aside from it not being a good fit, it will be more difficult for you, and you probably won't learn as much as you would like to.
I would agree with that, Duff. I would just want to say that, we are looking to make sure that we choose the right people, but also I think it's something that you have to do as well personally. Like if you are definitely, not going to be comfortable with this, or if you feel that you can't do without the comforts of home, maybe this is where you should sort of stop and just say, okay, yeah, this isn't for me. If if you're at this point and you say, wow, I don't think I can, make it on my own away from home. I can't live without central heating or central air conditioning. I need to be in a place that's exactly like it is at home. Then maybe this is where you can decide that it's not the right fit for you as well. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about a little bit as well is, we've been talking about the problem a lot, and we've mentioned it a couple of times in our conversation, right, Aline? So what is this big problem that we're always talking about?
Well, we can look at some numbers so that you can get a more graphic look at it. I can read you some stats. We have a survey where we've got 88% of people believe that immigrants should learn English, 9% believe that healthcare professionals should learn Spanish, and 3% don't have an opinion on the subject. Many people believe that the case is that these people just don't want to learn English, or that they don't have the motivation to, or that they shouldn't have come if they didn't know any English. And I believe that's very counterproductive. And it's quite sad to see that so many people are ignoring the big issue that we're really, I'm gonna lay out with some stats as well.
Yeah,
But
I suppose I just want to add to what you're saying there a little bit, but I think our reason as a program for raising awareness of what the problem is, and as you state, there's so many different points of views, and all of them are very respectable. But I suppose as a program, we believe that it's much more practical for, relatively privileged college students to learn Spanish. Because if you think about it, the immigrants are at quite a disadvantage. They're already struggling. They're already having to deal with being in a different environment, being in a different culture, working different jobs. And so it's much harder for the immigrant to learn English. Not that they don't want to. And I think that's, the key there. We genuinely do not believe that the immigrant doesn't want to learn English, but they have such a harder time with that concept than for college students. It's an extra class. It's possibly a summer program like this that would help dozens and dozens of Spanish speakers to be able to communicate more directly.
speaking on that, about the poll, which is quite opposed to the
Eye-opening.
reality
Yeah.
of what the Spanish speaking, environment is in the United States. With that being said, we can look at some of the numbers where we see that the US has more Spanish speakers than Spain, the country where the language originated, which
Wow.
is it's to the point where the US has more Spanish speakers than about 5 Latin American countries combined.
That's
And
insane.
it is,
So
it is.
just to think of like the population of 5 whole Latin American countries is yet smaller than the amount of Spanish speakers in the US right now today. That's
Exactly.
that's huge. So, and that just goes back to saying, for every healthcare professional that is able to communicate in Spanish, they will touch the lives of so many more people in the US, today. Just thinking about those numbers is really insane. I mean, the US has more Spanish speakers than every other Spanish speaking country in the world, and they're just second to Mexico. So only Mexico has more Spanish speakers in the world than the US. That to me is just mind-boggling.
I know. And I mean, obviously, doctors can't learn every single language that there is on Earth to be able to, you know, treat every single patient that doesn't speak English. But I believe that one step towards that is quite helpful. And I'm sure, not only Spanish, but, maybe a different language like Italian or something like that. That also helps. But we focus more so on Spanish because it's quite a different
I think
situation that's
the
going on, because
numbers,
the
yeah.
numbers show that the growth in this is quite large. It's definitely a different situation than with other languages, which is why we're focusing on this.
And
But it's
because,
really
I think also like for you and I, we've lived this on a personal level. We've seen the struggle of the immigrant people. Um, so how do these people become fluent in English? I mean, you have to think about it that way. What does that mean to them to become fluent in English? And just going back, Aline, to what I said in the beginning. I mean, I'm the daughter of immigrants. To Canada. And I also was able, through my work, to see the struggle of other immigrants coming into North America in general. These are people that have made a decision in their life at some point where they were in such a horrible situation that they weren't able to perhaps feed their families. They perhaps, couldn't provide a roof over their children's heads. I mean, coming from politically wrangled countries where there's sometimes war, where there's the dangers of, you know, the drug traffic and all of that. So these are people who were, you know, put in a position where they had to leave everything behind, where they perhaps left their home with the clothes they had on, and you know, maybe if they were lucky, a little bag of some memories, had to make their way, who knows, across how many difficult travels to make it into a country where, you know, they were not, you know, it's very foreign. Um, I can only imagine what it's like to be placed in something like that. So this immersion program gives you a little bit of sort of like a just like a, I suppose, like a brushstroke of what that feeling is. And I think the empathy that will be provided to our students, and is provided because we see it all the time, is a really important part of that cultural picking up of why these people aren't fluent yet. And so they come to this new country. Some of them are not even literate, unfortunately. So they have to become literate before they can pick up a second language. They're juggling so many things between, you know, a couple of jobs. They're barely sleeping, and, you know, they're trying to put some sleep in between the shifts. Some of them have 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet. So it's not easy picking up that language. And it's not like they don't want to. A lot of them are ashamed of it, as a matter of fact. They're ashamed that they can't communicate, that they can't go to their sons or daughters' you know, parent teacher meetings, and to the doctor, and so many other things, you know. So it's not just about making these people fluent in English. It's not as easy as it sounds, really.
Going on with the numbers, we can also see that, you know, it's not only the US having more than different countries, but we can specify that and see by state, in comparison to a few Latin American cities, such as, you know, Texas, that has more than a million, you know, more than a million more citizens that speak Spanish than in Santiago, which is where one of our schools is, as well as Buenos Aires, that has just a little bit more than New York. Um, so to me, it's quite eye-opening and quite boggling that, you know, people are still denying the fact that, you know, the numbers are quite large, and that those numbers aren't just numbers, they are people that are struggling and that are having these difficulties becoming a part of the community because of the language barrier. And I believe that, um, you know, talking about this and seeing that you as a student are quite interested in becoming a solution to that problem is taking a weight off these people's shoulders.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you were reading some of those numbers, Eileen. I know Texas has a Spanish-speaking population of over 6.5 million, which is, like you said, similar to the population of, actually larger than the population of the capital of Chile, which is Santiago. And, you know, if you think about it, how many lives will just one student working out of the state of Texas touch? How many lives will that person touch in terms of being able to simplify something that's, you know, that we take for granted? I mean, we we as citizens every day, you know, English speakers, we don't ever think twice about having to struggle to let somebody know what is happening with you during one of your most vulnerable times. I mean, we get sick, what do? We go to the doctor. We don't think about it twice. We don't think about, you know, we pick up the phone and make an appointment, and we don't even think about doing that. When for somebody who's not able to communicate in English very well, even that, even just the act of picking up the phone and making an appointment is a struggle. Not to mention that you might have to go with, your son or your daughter to the doctor, and maybe, have to speak in code so that your son or daughter doesn't understand about your personal ailments. I mean, it's insane. It's just it's just. I'm just glad that we're sitting here talking about this, and we have people like the students, the pre-health and pre-med students that are listening to us right now, um, thinking about the empathy that they could have and wanting to be a part of the solution. I mean, this is a really fast growing situation in the US. It's not like it's stopping anytime soon. There are a lot of different opinions, and we can respect all of those, but the bottom line is that this is growing at a huge pace in the US right now.
Definitely. I mean, the top 10 states are growing at a pace of more than 100%. And that's, you know, in
That's good.
states even that aren't border states, which is like a lot of people believe that it's just border states because they're bordering those. But the reality is that most of these are not the kind of places that you would expect, such as Tennessee, South Carolina, Maryland, and Virginia.
Wow. Yeah. And some of those can go up to closer to 200%, like in the case of South Dakota, which is 190% growth just in the past few years. So it really is something that we do have to consider as a society. And again, I know we said thank you in the beginning, but it just is such a large growing situation that, knowing that there's some of you out there who are interested in even listening to the option of becoming a solution to the problem, I think is wonderful. So thanks for listening.
We're not the only people who are talking about these things. I do have a couple of quotes from some very important medical associations and organizations that exist in the United States, such as the AMA, the National Institute of Health, and the U.S. National Library of Medicine. The AMA in the Journal of Ethics, they even say that doctors must face today's demographic realities. A Spanish-speaking doctor fills a critical nationwide gap, opening the doors of communication between doctor and patient.
Exactly. I mean, I can attest to that, Aline. I'm personally a translator and an interpreter, and I do specialize in the medical field, and I was an interpreter both in presence and over the phone for several years. I think it's fantastic that we have the technology today to be able to provide that support to doctors today. I mean, it's really difficult to think that we will be able to cover every single language, and you know, but having the applications out there, having the telephone interpretation services is fantastic. There are some downfalls to that, and we have to consider, and I can tell you firsthand, there aren't enough medical interpreters that have the proper training to go around and to be able to fill the need that is currently out there. So what ends up happening is that some of my colleagues that don't specialize in the medical field will also fill in those gaps. It's not a bad thing. I mean, it still is helpful. There is a bridge in the communication gap, but there are things that are definitely lost in translation. And then there's the fact that the medical professional is not building the relationship and that rapport with their patient directly, which is also not ideal. The patient tends to create that bond and that relationship with the interpreter rather than his or her healthcare provider. So that's something to be considered as well.
And as I said, there's quite some more quotes that we've got to read for you. Got the National Institute of Health that says, for clinicians, language barriers can invoke dread, with visions of wasted time, communication frustration, and increased difficulty in providing high-quality care.
I'd like to chime in there a little bit. In my own experience, I could see the frustration in some of those medical professionals. I mean, I think that the medical profession already is a stressful profession. The professionals are under constant stress with regards to their actual job. The long hours that they work, and just adding to the frustration, sometimes not being able to work with an app, fumbling, trying to get an interpreter on the line, them not being available.
And we can also talk about what the U.S. National Library of Medicine says. Communication barriers can have serious consequences for health, including misdiagnosis, inappropriate medication, and mistrust.
Oh boy, yeah, we could go on for ages there. There's so many cases and examples of things that go wrong with translation interpretation services. One of those, I think that is really memorable to me, at least, is the case of Willie Ramirez. Young guy, athletic, quite healthy, goes into the ER, and there's a false cognate there with the word intoxicated, where in Spanish, intoxicated could just mean something like food poisoning. And for an English language speaker, it's likely to have to do with drugs or alcohol or something like that. So Willie was treated for a drug overdose when what was really happening to him is that he was having an aneurysm, a stroke. And so he was misdiagnosed. Unfortunately, he's quadriplegic today. And that came from him not being able to communicate with his healthcare providers.
Contrary to the reality that we're seeing right now, there's still so much prejudice and judgment around these people, which really is counterproductive, as I said. Doesn't help the problem, and it really just, I feel like, exacerbates it.
Yeah, so many of these, I suppose, anti-immigrant feelings and sentiments in the US is really not helping the situation. And, I've said everybody can have their own opinion, and we absolutely respect that. But, when it comes down to the struggle these people are going through and have to be, you know, hearing these things like illegal aliens or job stealers or foreign invaders or, oh God, it just churns my stomach to even think and say some of these words. You're right. It's not helping the situation at all. It's just, I mean, I can imagine, and we saw it, Aline, you and I, helping immigrants in North America. They're going through such a hard time. They're struggling. They're trying to get their lives on track, and they're trying to fit into their new homes and new communities. And then just they're working so hard at it, and then they're insulted and they're mistreated and they're racially profiled, and it's just so hard. I just can't imagine anybody wanting to do that to another human being.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, this all goes like contrary to the reality that's going on right now. And even, despite what ACLU found out, which was that immigrants are paying more than 90 billion in taxes every year. And with that being said, a lot of people believe that, you know, these people are living on welfare. It's not quite equivalent, but the reality is that they are only receiving 5 billion out of those 90 that they put out towards the US Treasury.
It's a huge contribution that I don't think is being recognized as such. If you think about it, a lot of businesses today in the US are gearing themselves towards the market of the Latino people. And what does that mean? It means that they have high acquisition power, or higher than it was in the past. That means that they're contributing to the economy. It's so much so that there are businesses realizing that there's a market for these people, and they're actually investing in creating markets around Spanish-speaking audiences. So there is a huge contribution in terms of, job creation, in terms of, like you said, Aline, contribution to the market and to the actual government. Like $90 billion a year is not a low amount of money. It's actually quite important.
That's true. And not only with money, I mean, talking about the language as is, there are a lot of groups that are pushing towards an official language in the US, which at the moment is not quite there. The US actually doesn't have a legal official language, and it's quite, you know, I think as Jeff Pullum says, he's a professor of linguistics of the U of Edinburgh and a co-author of the Cambridge Grammar of the English Language. He says that at the end of the day, there are two broad issues with this conversation, and it's that if the US should have an official language of government by law, and another one of whether these people are pushing towards making other languages being spoken and being taught in the US illegal, which I think is also something quite important to talk about, because many of these groups are saying, if you're in the U.S., you must speak English. It's basically kind of like a requirement for them.
Following on that, it's what are you going to do with that? Like, what is your decision? And I think that every position can be understood, but you as an individual need to decide. You need to decide, what are you going to do? Are you going to be the one there to help, or are you going to turn your back on this problem and on this present situation? And I think that's, when it comes down to which route are you going to take, that's the decision that you need to make. Are you going to be a part of the solution, or do you just, turn your back and say, hey, that's not my problem? You're here in a new country. You need to learn this country's language, and whatever it takes, it really isn't my problem. I don't care if you're working 3 jobs. I don't care if you're not literate. That's your problem. So, when it comes down to it, that's what we need to know. Who are you in this situation? What's your path?
And again, as we've been saying, there's no judgment on your decision or on your opinion on the matter. We aren't here to judge. The choice is yours at the end of the day. And the fact that you're listening to this and showing interest in and being a solution to the problem is a step forward in that direction.
Absolutely. I think it's learning and picking up a second language is not only, helping to bridge gap in so many areas. I find it a little sad, as a matter of fact, when people say, no, we shouldn't learn any other languages, and, English should be the only language, because languages are, to me, the key to the world. There's so much that so many doors it opens for you in terms of intellectual knowledge, literature, arts, just, global knowledge in general. But again, I mean, it's your decision. And whatever your decision is very respectable. I think that anybody in the healthcare field is already providing such a big part of themselves for others. That's in itself very respectable. But, again, if you want to be a part of the solution, that's fantastic. If you don't feel that that's, the way you want to go, and you don't think it's your problem, then that's absolutely respectable as well. Yeah, we want to be responsible, and we feel it's our responsibility to get you to this possibility of being the solution. We feel it's our responsibility to I suppose, get you further and get you closer to becoming culturally empathetic for your Spanish speaking patients in a safe and effective way. We want you to be able to help out in communities where Spanish is common. And we've, mentioned a few statistics in regards to how important this is in terms of numbers, in terms of areas in the US. So we really have that desire to be able to do that for you.
And as we've been saying, we do believe that it's a lot more practical for one student to learn Spanish rather than dozens of immigrant patients to learn English. Because of that, um, you as a medical professional will help more people than those people will help you in the end of the day.
And imagine, Aline, I mean, we lived through this. You took your grandparents into the doctors and some of their friends and their families as well. They're going into this feeling like inadequate already. They're ashamed that they can't go in. They're scared because they don't know what's wrong with them. Some of them have, so many things going on, and just imagine the delight on their faces if they go into the doctor's office with all of these fears already, and the doctor's able to speak to them in their language. That must be the biggest sigh of relief ever. Yeah, so the sense of relief when the patient realizes that their doctor is able to communicate with them in that language is huge. I mean, just knowing that they are visible. It's almost like that healthcare professional, that doctor, that nurse or whatever, is making them feel like they matter, that they're an important part of the community, and they're not they're not a shadow. They're an actual person, and I care about you, and I want to make this difficult time for you a little bit easier. So we've had several thousands of students take this program, and one of them is Evangeline, and Evangeline left a video for all of you that you can listen to. Let's if Aline, you could play that, that would be great. So we can listen to Evangeline talk about her experience shadowing doctors in Latin America.
Me llamo Evangeline Halbuena y soy de los Estados Unidos, de Houston, Texas. I did have doubts at first about coming because I didn't know if a month would be too long for me, but coming here I feel like there's so much to do that a month isn't long enough. I think for future students I would tell them not to be afraid to go out and see the city. And it's not scary to travel by yourself to go to school and back every day, because once you know how to get there, it's very simple. The people are very patient with your Spanish. I shadowed Dr. Isla, and he did bariatric surgery, which was really amazing. It was really nice to see that I was there looking inside someone's body, and just that moment of being there made me realize that even though I did all these things, used all these resources to get here, I just couldn't believe that that was actually happening to me. I felt really, really lucky, and I hope you do too.
All right, so that was Evangeline. She really had a lot to say about her shadowing experience and how that made her feel. We should also talk about how, what the tools we have available for you to become fluent are.
Yeah, exactly. How do we do this? Like, how do we work our little magic and get you all fluent in a very short time? It's actually not that difficult because, as we said, you're being immersed into the culture and into the language. So a couple of things here that we want to talk about are some of the components of this program. So we'll talk a little bit about the locations, the classes, the shadowing, some of the extracurricular activity, as well as the housing. So if you're interested in this program, I think this is where you want to pick up some more of those pieces of information and about the tools that we offer you to reach fluency.
That's right. So we actually have locations in 3 countries. Um, we've got them in Peru, in Chile, and in Argentina. And we've got, good reasons to be here. Could you expand on that?
Absolutely. We've chosen these 3 countries for a couple of different reasons. One of them is that there isn't a flood of English speaking tourists in these countries. So the probability of you speaking in English is much lower than in other countries. So that's really important for us because we want you to be immersed in a place where you will be able to practice your Spanish more and more. Um, these cities and the countries that we've chosen have a large middle class, and so it's easy to meet and relate to the locals. So you're not just going to be in touch with I suppose, the extremes. And I know Latin America has a lot of extremes, but we want you to get a little bit of an actual feel for sort of like the middle ground of the culture. And also, if you sort of look at a map of Latin America, so you're looking at that ice cream cone, um, the locations are towards the bottom of the cone. And the reason for that is because, unfortunately, towards the top of that cone, and even a little bit further up, there's a lot of drug trade. And so we've chosen these countries because it just skips the whole area of the drug trade. They're safe. Yeah, so we want to provide that environment for our students.
Definitely. I mean, if we look at a list of the top 50, um, in several countries do have many cities in that list, some of them being Mexico, Brazil, Venezuela, Colombia, and even the US, that has 5 of the most dangerous cities in the world. Whereas the countries where our schools are located at do not have any in that list. And they are statistically safer than the US. With that being said, it is advised to travel safely just as you would to any other place, maybe in the US.
Yeah, I mean, I remember having a couple of students say to me, "Hey, my parents were afraid that the safety and geez, this is safer than it is at home." And so in many neighborhoods in the U.S. Um, students feel less secure than they have in our cities in our countries here. So that was an interesting fact that I heard from a couple of students here.
So I'm sure people are probably asking themselves, how is our program better than the classes that they have at home? And we've been talking about that for quite a while. The reason why our program is so effective is because of the small classes, because of the immersion aspect of it, and because of the incentive that you have to use these skills that you've learned in the classroom during the same day. um, and within all the programs combined, we've seen so many people come out and you know have that experience of of becoming fluent, and you know
Yeah, some of them say, I'm bad at languages, and that really doesn't exist. Like, you're not bad at languages. It's just that a lot of people are confused between practice and being good at exams and quizzes. And those are different capabilities in terms of language. Like, you, it's not that you're bad at languages. Maybe you just don't test well, or you don't do well in a classroom setting, like a regular or traditional class. So maybe you get really not so great marks when you're taking a Spanish class at home, but when you are immersed in a small class and Spanish is everywhere in your environment, then things are different, and that just is like a natural learning process, sort of like when you're little and you're learning your first language. You relate sounds and words to situations that happen or that are going on, and that's how you remember them. So this is sort of like the same thing over. you're learning words and you're learning and picking up vocabulary and sounds and whatnot, and it just enters a different part of your brain with regards to memories. And so when you want to express yourself, you're triggering a different part of the brain than you would something that you memorized or learned versus something that you lived. And that's just, a scientific fact at the end of the day. So.
Well, let's take a look at a video we have of Catherine talking about her experience learning Spanish here in an immersion program. She actually took several years of Spanish, used the language for quite a while, but then, she has a different experience in the sense that, she had learned the language and had worked with the language, but never had the experience of being immersed. So let's take a look at what she has to say.
Hola, me llamo Catalina y soy de Nuevo México en los Estados Unidos. Soy estudiante a Harvard en Massachusetts y soy estudiante de biología. I have absolutely loved being at Isela, especially because of the classes and the teachers. They're so nice and they take the time not only to explain to you the concepts that you don't understand in Spanish, but they also take the time to explain what are the great things about this culture, what are the great things to see in the city that you're in, and they really take the time to get to know you personally. My shadowing experience so far has been wonderful. I've gotten to see 2 surgeries, and I feel like what I've seen has helped me figure out the type of doctor that I need to shadow next when I get back to the States and learn more about as I proceed through medical school.
All right, so that was Catherine, and yeah, she gives us a good idea of the difference between learning it in a classroom and being out there and practicing it on a daily basis. So that's wonderful.
Yeah, definitely. And another component that we have in our program is the shadowing experience, so which is also quite important. So could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So part of the program includes medical shadowing. And one of the things that I always start off with is that this is hands-off shadowing. And we comply very strictly to the AACP rules and regulations. A lot of programs don't adhere to those and they don't comply with the rules and regulations. And that could be really it could be a huge setback to pre-med, pre-health students that will apply for med school. That might actually ruin your application. So it's important that whatever program you choose is very compliant to the AACP rules and regulations. So hands off. And what you will be doing is viewing doctors in a relationship with their patients and how that goes on in terms of not only the language bit, which is really important because the focus here is understanding and getting your ear sort of accustomed to the vocabulary that's used, but also those cultural nuances that we have mentioned a couple of times before. It's not uncommon for a doctor to not just shake hands with their patient, but sometimes they actually greet their patients with a hug and a kiss on the cheek because that's the way we conduct ourselves here. As I said before, at some point, we're very touchy-feely type of people, and so that little hug or that little kiss on the cheek is a way for the doctor to open up on a different level of I suppose, care towards their patient. It's a way that they're showing that, hey, I care about you. I'm not only seeing you as a number. You are a human being. You are a person to me. And so they do share some of those things. And so a lot of those things and a lot of those little nuances that you'll pick up are really important, such as also, for example, some questions that the doctor might ask. A doctor in North America could ask a patient, are you on any medication? The patient says no, and off you go. Here in Latin America, the doctor will ask perhaps the same question, and the patient will say, no, I'm not taking any other medication, but the doctor will ask a few more questions on that topic. For example, did you take any herbal remedies, or did you take this remedy or that remedy? Because they know that medication is not viewed in Latin America in the same way. Unfortunately, a lot of people do take herbal medications or traditional medications, and they don't feel or they don't understand that that is also a medication. And then the other problem that we do have in Latin America is that there is a high probability of getting prescription medications without prescriptions, or people self-medicate a lot. So that is also something that a medical doctor would consider here. There's a lot that goes into medical shadowing, but we do want to warn you about one thing, and that is I suppose the cultural aspect of timing in Latin America. So don't be surprised about how a doctor's schedule can change from day to day. One of the things that is really difficult for students is understanding how time works in Latin America. So, they're expecting to get their schedule a month in advance or a few weeks before they come, and that's not going to happen. You will get your schedule the Friday before for the following week, and there still may be changes within the week. And it does look like something that's improvised, but it's not. It's just the way things work here. And don't ask me how, because it's really difficult for anybody who's been in North America, and how things are so conducted so orderly, and you have your schedule with weeks in advance. And it does seem improvised, but somehow it works, and it works just fine here. So it's part of the culture, and be prepared for that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think people here and around Latin America, I think they take more into account last minute happenings that might affect their scheduling, and I think that's a big part of it as well. So people take into account, maybe something might happen to their family, or maybe they might get into an accident, or maybe they might run into an accident on the road, and that will make them become more late, and
Yeah, I
stuff
think
like that.
it has to do with like the way people prioritize, I think, differently here in Latin America than they do in the US. People really live in a different state, I think, and so sometimes it's, I suppose, not compatible culturally thinking about what is the priority in one place and in another. So that's really something to be considered.
I can't.
All right, so shadowing is a big component, as I said, in this program. So why don't we listen to one of the students talking about her experience with the shadowing portion of the program. And let's listen to Nia Mitchell.
Hi, my name is Nia Mitchell. I go to Georgia State University. I am a rising junior, and my major is biology, and I'm a pre-medical student. For me, I decided to come to ISELA because I wanted to do a Spanish and medicine program. I saw a lot of programs online that offered, a medical Spanish class or just general Spanish classes. But this program was the only one that I found that offered medical Spanish and general Spanish, as well as shadowing opportunities. So, and I talked to my school, and I was able to get the credits worked out, and I'm earning credits for this program. So I was really excited to start coming here. When I heard about the shadowing opportunities that we would be getting, I was really excited. Before I came to the program, I was a little nervous because I have never traveled outside of the U.S. by myself, just like family trips and things like that. And so I kind of thought I was going to be, in a foreign country and not have a lot of help to get around and just have to figure things out myself. But the people working at Isela were really, really helpful, always giving us, suggestions for restaurants and places to exchange money and things like that. And they made it really, really easy for all of these students to be in a different country. And I started to feel really comfortable really quickly. So yeah, it was really good for me. Something I really enjoyed was my opportunity in the clinics and the hospital. I was one of the students who was chosen to do a few 12-hour shifts in the emergency room at a private clinic, I believe. And so that experience was really great. I haven't gotten to do a lot of shadowing in the U.S., and so I got to see a little bit about what hospitals and clinics are like here in South America. And when I go back to school and start shadowing, I'll be able to compare it to what things were like here. I saw a lot of really cool things and really excited that I got to do that. I also got to see a few surgeries with a gastroenterologist. So yeah, my experience here has been really great, and I wish I could stay longer, but yeah, everything's been great. You're welcome. Yeah, no problem.
All right, so that was Nia Mitchell letting us into her experience with medical shadowing. So let's talk about what activities you can expect to participate in during the program.
Right. So we have several cultural, social activities set up for everyone in the group. It's a busy program. So after classes and shadowing, there's not a lot of time left over, but we do make sure that there are some things set up for you so that you're able to understand a little bit more about the culture, and you're able to network as well with the other people in the program. So there'll be tours and museum visits and perhaps some dancing classes and cooking classes as well. The idea behind all of these things is also to enhance the experience of the language and cultural immersion. So even though you might be in a dancing class, which sounds like a lot of fun, and it definitely is, who doesn't like to salsa here and there, you're also learning about the language because these classes are in Spanish. So there's instructions that you have to understand, and there's a little bit about where, for example, that dish came from, and the vocabulary of the fruits and the vegetables, and the directions of cutting, chopping, and frying, and sautéing, and all of that great stuff. So it's definitely twofold. And then on some weekends, there could be some trips that may be extracurricular and available for you to take. So you can ask the people at the schools about those. The idea is that you learn more about your environment and associate it to the culture as well.
So what about housing? Can you tell me a little bit more about that, Mom?
Right. So a big part of our program has to do with your housing option, because your housing option with us is a host family. So the reason we have this option available for our students is because this component of the program provides like the 360 of it the rest of the day. So you've got your 180 degrees throughout the day, and that's wonderful. But living the life of a person in Latin America gives you a different experience, and it gives you that upper hand when trying to understand where these people are coming from. So the day that you're able to speak to them, you've lived through what it's like to live in Latin America. And although you may be a little more comfortable, even though it still is different than what you're accustomed to on a daily basis, and it is probably a little more comfortable than what they would be used to, you get a real sense of what it's like to be a Latino in Latin America. And so it gives you that experience and that bit of cultural empathy. And then also you get the rest of the practice. So you're actually living and breathing the language and the culture while you're here. And I know one of the questions that we get asked a lot is in terms of security for these families, and how is it that we go about choosing these host families? And just to let you know what we do, first of all, we have several host families that have been with the program for several years. And so they're quite used to helping out in terms of culture shock and that kind of thing. And They may or may not speak a lot of English, but they know exactly what to do in terms of helping you to communicate and get what you need. But just for your peace of mind, they do go through a very strict and a selection process. So they have to apply to be a host family. They have to provide background checks for everyone that lives in the family and everyone that visits frequently to the home. They have spot checks and as well as regularly scheduled visits. And they have to comply with a series of requisites that we need from them. So there is a very rigorous process in terms of finding those host families for you. And again, that's part of the reason why the spots are so limited as well.
Let's listen to one of the families that's been with us for a little over 10 years. It's the Munoz Rodriguez family, and they are quite a popular host family with our students. They are very, sweet and empathetic, and, let's take a look at what they had to say.
Nosotros somos la familia Muñoz Rodríguez. Mi nombre es Américo Muñoz. Acá me acompaña mi esposa Verónica. Llevamos 35 años de matrimonio y tenemos 2 hijos. Me acompaña Joaquín, hola, mi hijo menor.
Estamos trabajando con ESELA desde 2014. Hemos recibido más de 50 extranjeros, ya desde 18 años hasta 70 años. Nosotros los acogemos, nos mentalizamos en que ellos tienen que aprender español. Les enseñamos, los ayudamos.
La comunicación luego continúa. Yo creo que es porque ellos se sienten muy cómodos en esta casa o con esta familia. Entonces les gusta seguir en contacto y saber cómo estamos y es mutuo.
Hemos disfrutado.
Ha sido una linda experiencia y muy agradecido de CELA que nos ha
dado la oportunidad de compartir estos momentos que han sido bastante agradables.
Okay, and so that was the Munoz Rodriguez family telling us a little bit about their experience as a host family with our program for over 10 years. But let's take you through what a typical day in the life of a student in the program would be like. All right, so your day would typically start off by having breakfast with your host family, and then likely you would meet up with other students to walk to school. Then you would start with your Spanish fundamentals class at the school, followed by about a 20 to 30 minute break so that you can, charge up your energies again, talk and make plans with your friends for the day, as well as get a tea or a coffee or just a little quick snack there for you. Then you'll go back into a Spanish class again, a second block, probably more geared towards the communicational portion or conversation. And then you can probably have lunch with your classmates in Latin America. That's at around 1 o'clock. You could be scheduled, for example, for shadowing in the afternoon, so you could do that. And then you would probably go home and have dinner with your host family, then to meet up with some of your classmates and socialize with some of your newly found friends as well. So that gives you an idea of what typically goes on. This isn't set in stone. It depends on what your schedule will depend a lot on your shadowing schedule. And as I said before, those schedules tend to change a lot. So you should be prepared for last minute schedule changes, very common in Latin America.
Most of our classes start on Mondays, so we usually suggest to our students that you plan to arrive on the Sunday before so that you can get settled in, that you can meet your host family, so that you can rest a little bit, take a look around what's there for you. And we also provide on the first day of class on Monday either a welcome lunch or dinner so that you can have some orientation, meet your classmates, and get some tips and tricks on how to move around where you are.
once you're settled and everything else, you will quickly realize that this isn't your typical study abroad program. It's a lot busier than other programs, but with the Spanish classes and the shadowing and the cultural activities and whatnot, it's definitely not like a university class. You'll be doing a lot less studying than you would in a regular university class or college class. And this is all about, less studying, more doing, and making lifelong memories. This will definitely be the time of your life. Don't just expect a leisure trip. This is definitely not a leisure trip because it's a lot of hard work involved. But you will be making wonderful memories and meeting people that you probably would have never met had you not taken this program. All right. So, after all of this, I really want to take this opportunity to thank you for realizing the importance of this program. As I said before, for me, as a Latino, having been the daughter of immigrant parents and having gone through, the assistance through this journey for a lot of different Latinos through my professional career, I know the difficulty this adventure that these people embark upon. They're very brave people, and it's just so refreshing to know that there are people out there like you that are deciding to take some time out to become a part of the solution. So on a personal level, I'd like to thank every single one of you out there that's listening to us today that are actually, thinking selflessly about helping others and that are genuinely interested in lending a helping hand to those people in need. These are, people who have had a really difficult time in their life, who have left everything behind, who are, come from much underprivileged, situations, families, and they're just having such a hard time and thinking about healthcare. I've said it before and I'll just say it again. You're so vulnerable. You're having a difficult time. You're scared when you get sick, you don't know what's going on. And just to have that healthcare professional that took that extra step, that just did that little bit more to reach these people on a human level, that's just really important. So I really want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to this open house, and hopefully we're able to help you to take that next step.
Right. So what we're expecting to be the outcome of the program is to basically move you forward towards safely and empathetically treating your Spanish-speaking patients. Having that empathy with them and being able to communicate with them, even if it's just a couple of words that you get to learn. It's really a critical skill that will help you save so many lives and open the eyes to more professionals on what the problem is. So you'll be more empathetic, but as well you'll be able to teach your colleagues a little bit about what it's like, what for those patients that you might be treating. And basically it's a win-win situation because you're not only helping yourself, but you're also helping other people.
Okay. So it definitely will provide you with a lot. It's like that, it just keeps on giving. Not only will you be able to treat your patients in a better way and hopefully save more lives, but you will also be getting ahead. And it's a win-win situation. The day that you apply for a job and you're able to write fluent in Spanish, and in a society where we talked about the growth and the importance of Spanish in North America right now and the U.S., you will definitely be in a better situation than many others. So there's lots of additional benefits if we're thinking about it that way. You'll be traveling, on off-beaten paths, which is something different because when you take a regular vacation, you're setting yourself up to, resting and recharging, and that's wonderful too. And you do get to see a little bit of different cultures, but you're in a completely different state of mind. So, taking this type of travel, it's as we said, it's not leisure, it's a lot of work, but it's also feeding you back so much with regards to what you're picking up. I talked about networking with friends, and these are people from other schools throughout the U.S. that you may not have met if you hadn't taken this program. And these are people that are going to be your future colleagues. So it's really important that you do create these friendships and these networks early on. They'll come in handy, I'm sure, in the future. We've had so many people also come down and they've found love. That's on a lighter note, but it does happen, and it's wonderful that it does. So you could potentially find your romantic partner. You'll be understanding so much more. I mean, there's so much to knowing a second language, and people are perceived as being like more intelligent or just more interesting because they know a second language. So you'll be able to, read books and watch movies in different languages, and that'll be wonderful. And you'll be able to tell your travel stories, and it's just so many added benefits in general.
So I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, how much is this going to cost them, or what the value of the program is. We're on the low middle side of a typical study abroad program. It's about $900 a week, but it's designed to have a good value because we're talking about a 2-in-1 program where you're not only learning Spanish, but you're also shadowing doctors, which is quite important.
So yeah, definitely, because pre-health and pre-med students are quite fortunate because of the amount of their wages in the future, their return on this investment will come much more quickly than it would for other professions such as teachers and social workers, just because their expectations of earnings are lower. So that's something to consider as well. Also, I just want to let you know, if cost is a concern to you, we do have really convenient payment options. We have a student-friendly payment plan. We have credit card options. So be sure to talk to a student advisor who can definitely give you a lot more information with regards to those options for you.
Right. But we also want to let you know that this program will most likely be very expensive if you don't plan on taking advantage of all the tools that we have for you. If you don't plan on coming to class or skipping shadowing, at the end of the day, it will probably be more cost effective to go to a beach resort if you don't feel that this program is for you.
Yeah, if you're not planning on taking advantage of everything we've said, like if you're not thinking that you're coming to do this because you do want to learn the Spanish, you do want to become fluent, you do want to shadow doctors, you are interested in becoming that healthcare professional that has an edge in terms of future. It definitely is very expensive. If you're looking at it like a vacation, you can certainly get a cheaper vacation. This is not a vacation, and we need you to understand that. And with all of that, with all of that information, we also have to be, I suppose we do have to filter who we are able to take onto this program. So if you're thinking of applying to this program, it's really important that you're able to say yes to a few questions that are really important, I think. Maybe, Aline, if you could read some of those questions out, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. So number 1, are you able to leave the comforts of home behind for at least 4 weeks? We talked about that earlier when we were talking about people who would be a good fit for the program. It's quite different here in Latin America than in the U.S., where maybe your living conditions would be the exception to the rule and be maybe far higher in the class system than in Latin America. So if you're not able to leave behind those comforts, maybe you might be very uncomfortable when getting here. So number 2, do you have a genuine desire to use Spanish in your healthcare career?
Yeah, it's really important that we do get people that are actually planning to use their language skills in their future as a healthcare professional. Otherwise, it just becomes a really expensive trip, and we're not looking for that. You are able to do a lot with these courses, not only to become fluent for class purposes and whatnot, but are you planning on using your language skills in your career? Because that's really, really what we're aiming for.
Number 3, can you get along well with people of a different culture than your own?
And that's really important too, because remember, you'll be living in a home with people from a different culture. You will also be sitting in classrooms where you will be with people of different cultures and backgrounds as well. So it's really important that we do get people in the program that are open-minded, and are able to settle in well.
Right. Number 4, can you be away from your normal support network of friends and family?
And that's a good one too, Aline, because even though we are, as a school, prepared to help you through sometimes a little bit of culture shock and just missing home, and so are the host families, it's important that you also realize that you will be away from your family and your support group for a while, and so you should be able to plan for how you will, take some steps to be able to get through that. And that's something to consider as well.
Right, right. So, number 5, can you go with the flow for unexpected schedule changes? We talked about this before, where schedule changes in Latin America are quite common, especially last minute ones, which could make you feel maybe that we're living in constant improvisation and constant improvised plans, which is not the case here, but we still need to let you know that this is a common occurrence here, and maybe if you're not comfortable with that, it can be very frustrating.
All right, so we've been talking for a while. I know that some of you might want to just take a quick break. I know I want to grab something to drink as well. So why don't we just take a 3-minute coffee break? And while we do that, just to remind you that if you look underneath this video, you'll be able to find that link and instructions to get that $75 application fee waiver. So be sure to do that, and we'll be right back.
All right, so now that we're back, we can get into the Q&A session so that you can listen to some of our most frequently asked questions. And if you do have any other questions, we'll give you the information so that you can contact a student advisor. Okay, so one of our most frequently asked questions is how much prior. So one of our most frequently asked questions is how much prior Spanish is required.
Right. And a lot of people are kind of afraid about their Spanish knowledge. And some people say, oh, I just don't know enough to be able to get by. Just to let you know, we are prepared and we are set up to cater to all levels of Spanish, whether you're a beginner, a newbie, or you have some Spanish training as well. There are different levels that are suitable for everyone. Don't be afraid. There will be people that are at your level. In every group, we always have quite a good mix with regards to people who are beginners and people who are more advanced in their learning skills. So don't be afraid. You don't have to actually have any prerequisites with regards to Spanish. All right.
Okay, so a lot of people are probably concerned on how they're going to pay for the program. So how can they apply for financial aid?
Right, yes. So one of the concerns that some of our students have is how am I going to pay for this? And I did say before that there are student-friendly payment options, there are credit card options, there's 0% interest payment plan that you can apply for directly with our program. There are financial aid solutions for you that you are best off speaking directly to your homeschool advisor about. And our advisors will definitely help you navigate through whatever process needs to be completed on our end, and will help you to find that information. So you will have a support system in terms of having one of our student advisors help you navigate all of that.
With regards to the network of support that we were talking about in the questions, I'm sure many are asking if a family member or a friend can visit them.
It's really important that you embark on this adventure on your own. This is part of what the program is there to do. One of the things that you get from this program is growing a lot in terms of your personal self and it's in your personal growth. So we don't recommend that you travel with family. However, we do understand that it can be difficult, and therefore we do provide students who require it with a 1 week pass for a family member or a friend to come down and visit you for a week. And, you know, they can definitely take the class with you. But part of this this adventure is being on your own. So, you know, take that into consideration as well. It's wonderful if you are able to take advantage of that and have somebody come down and visit you for a week. But this is something that you want to do on your own. This is your experience. This is going to be what's going to provide you with that, you know, awakening of so many of the new senses that we've been talking about.
So most of our students are college students. So how can they receive college credit for the program?
Yes, that is definitely a possibility. It's very important that any student seeking to get college credit for this program speaks to their home school advisor, first of all. We do have a form that we need you to fill out so that we are in line with what your school requires in terms of approving college credits for you. So be sure to let your student advisor with our Spanish and Medicine program know that you are seeking credits, and they will inform you of what you need to do and what the following steps are to try to do that for you.
I'm sure a lot of parents are probably concerned about the safety, and we talked about this earlier, but just to give them a little bit more of security and confidence when taking the decision of coming over to Latin America. So is it really a dangerous area?
Yeah, as you said, Aline, we did sort of touch upon that a little bit before, but just to let you know that our schools, as well as host families, are located and situated in upper middle class neighborhoods. Safety is a really big concern for us, so it's really important that we do choose these areas in the cities that we're located and that the program takes place. Having said that, do remember that we chose these cities and these countries specifically because they are quite a bit a ways from the drug trafficking areas. So they will definitely be a lot safer than some of the other countries that are closer to the upper end of the South American cone. We do take that into consideration. So rest assured that these cities and countries were chosen specifically for the safety that they provide students during the program.
Okay, so for those who have already made the decision and are going to apply, they're probably wondering what they should pack. So, what clothes are recommended to bring over to Latin America, and what about laundry?
Yeah, absolutely. That's probably one of the biggest concerns when you're, thinking of making this a reality. When you start packing your bag, this just hits you, and it's like, oh my God, it's actually happening. So that's a really exciting thing to be thinking about already. Remember that your program is a summer program, but that means that you're coming to the southern hemisphere, which means it's winter here. And although winters here are much milder than you're used to at home, or at least some of you, it won't be snowing or anything like that, most likely, with the exception of perhaps Mendoza and Santiago that, once in a while gets a little bit of snow. But the homes here are not, I suppose, as weatherproofed as they are in North America. Remember, we talked a little bit about things not being exactly as they are at home. And for example, homes in Chile don't have insulation or central heating or central air conditioning. So, fleece PJs are absolutely a must if you're going to Chile. In Argentina, because they produce fuel, they do have more of a I suppose more advanced constructions and heating systems, so it's a little bit different, and it is a bit colder over there as well. So it really depends on the country that you're coming to, but dressing in layers is key. The weather here is such that mornings and evenings can get really cold, but mid-afternoon, even in the winter, sometimes you could get away with a light jacket or even, short sleeves. So dressing in layers is key, and be sure to consider those things when packing.
Okay, so those were all of our frequently asked questions. So if you have any more questions, as I said, you can contact a student advisor via call, text, or email. And remember to look down below for the link to the $75 application fee waiver. So I think that's it today.
Yeah, we want to be mindful of your time. So those were some of the questions that we, frequently get asked, but I'm sure you might have lots more where those come from. So we are happy to answer those for you. Just give us a ring or text, or we're happy to have somebody give you a ring back. And as Eileen said, make sure to take advantage of that $75 application fee waiver, and hopefully we will be in touch with you very soon. I really hope this was helpful for all of you, and we can't wait to see you here at the Spanish and Medicine Program 2020. Take care. Bye-bye.